Smart Mark Video, Best on the Indies. We're back, this time with the money, Adam Cole. Adam Cole, thank you for joining us today.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Why don't you tell us we'll do the generic start for you. How did you get interested in wrestling? And
Sure. Well, I grew up in the Attitude Era, like when pro wrestling first started making that change of being more sexual and being more violent, like the way Vince was running his product and ECW was around and stuff like that. So when my parents were together, they didn't want me to watch wrestling, but eventually they ended up splitting up when I was like 10 years old. So my mom ended up letting me watch wrestling, but it's because I was taking karate. I was doing karate lessons at this point. And I was like really, really into it. Like I would get there really, really early. I would stay really late. And I really, really loved it. And I really respected my karate instructor. I kind of looked at him as like a father figure. So one particular time I got there really early, and I was just warming up, and he was running on the treadmill, and he was watching a taped Raw where Kane and Stone Cold Steve Austin were putting Paul Bearer in a sewer. And he said to me, he goes, do you watch pro wrestling? And I said, yeah, all the time. And I'd never watched it before, but I wanted to fit in with him so bad. So he said to me, he goes, okay, he goes, well, if you get a written note from your parents, he goes, I'll let you borrow WrestleMania 15. So I went home and I begged my mom. I'm like, Mom, please, just let me borrow this tape. Because again, I just wanted to fit in with this guy. And I guess she assumed that if a karate instructor who's teaching discipline and respect and honor and all this stuff is willing to let your son, some 10-year-old kid watch pro wrestling, that it couldn't be that bad. So she signed off and let me borrow the tape. And I watched it initially just because, like I said, just because I wanted to fit in with him. But I ended up like completely falling in love with it. Like specifically, Stone Cold Steve Austin was a guy that I just loved to watch, and grew up. Like I remember too, like when I first was a wrestling fan, it wasn't even the matches that I was into. It was just like the ring entrances. Like I loved how Steve Austin could come out and the glass would break and 20,000 people would lose their minds just over one person. Like I couldn't comprehend in my head how someone had that much power and ability to be able to create that much emotion just by walking down a ramp. So I was so captivated by that. Initially, that was how I became a fan.
you also, at some point, you did the backyard thing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Who else was Tyler in on that as well?
Yeah, Ty Hagen now, who used to be Tyler Veritas, me and him have been best friends since the third grade, for real. And how we became friends was I was a wrestling fan by this point, and like Pokemon was a really, really big thing. So what happened is he had WWF The Music Volume 3, and I had this Ultimate Pokemon Guide, and we decided to make this big trade, and to this day I joke around with him and say that I still made the better trade because I still have the CD, and the Pokemon Guide is obviously gone forever. But yeah, it just started off where it was like he had a trampoline, and we used to play the WWF Music Volume 3. We used to jump around on the trampoline, and of course it was like we saw Stone Cold do the stunner. We saw the guys like do the moves we saw on Monday Night Raw and Nitro and stuff like that. So we said, oh yeah, let's try doing stuff to each other. And then we got a camera, and then it just kind of went from there. And it actually grew into like this I don't want to say big thing because it by no means was anything special. It was backyard wrestling. But we ended up like building our own ring, and we would do shows on like half days at school. And it was free, but we would draw like 50 or 60 kids from high school who would come and watch us and stuff. And we took it so serious. Like I was the booker in the backyard promotion, and of 3 people. And yeah, and I took it so serious. Like I was like, no, guys, we can't do this. This doesn't make sense. This will make this character look weak. We need to make this guy look strong. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like just so into it and so passionate about this little backyard thing that we had going on. And I love it. And to this day, I know backyard wrestling is really frowned upon. And I certainly think that if you want to advance in pro wrestling, you obviously need to get trained properly. But I do, to an extent, think that backyard wrestling helped me at least get over that fear, that like initial fear of like taking a bump and not being afraid to get in there and do things, because I was so comfortable with already falling on something that was way harder than a wrestling ring, to where when I got in and trained and first started taking bumps, I wasn't scared, I wasn't afraid, because I had been falling improperly on my back for years. So I had a good time. I had a good time with it.
And at what point do you decide to actually start training for real? And
Well, too, if you don't like, when I was a kid too, I remember initially like I was always like a giant wrestling fan, but I never really knew like how to get into it, or even if I wanted to be a wrestler. But I was talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin earlier, and actually at WrestleMania 17 when he wrestled The Rock, I remember people had always talked to me about how they got goosebumps when they were moved by something, like whether it's like a scene in a movie or they hear their favorite song and they're like, oh, this song gives me goosebumps. And I had no idea what that feeling was like until I watched WrestleMania 17 and Steve Austin came out that night, and 67,000 people like completely lost their minds. And I had goosebumps for the very first time in my life. I'll never forget it. And I literally watched that specific tape every day for that summer vacation that I had off for school. So I have like that entire show completely memorized because I was so obsessed and so into it. So I decided at that point, I said, okay, being a fan is not going to be good enough for me. I need to get involved in pro wrestling. So at that point, I started following like different independent promotions and stuff overseas, and then there was this website too, like called Obsessed with Wrestling, that I was really into, that like helped me understand and like be exposed to the other independent stuff out there, which is such a cool website. And then I got my first wrestling magazine, where I think it was called World of Wrestling, and I got like the very first issue, and there was an article in there about Dory Funk Jr. School down in Florida. And as far as I was concerned, that was the only wrestling school in the entire world. So my goal was, when I graduate high school, I'm going to move down to Florida and train with Dory Funk. And then I got the Idiot's Guide to Pro Wrestling, and there was 10 wrestling schools listed in this book. So I was like, and then I saw the number 2 school was the Samoan School in Whitehall, Pennsylvania. And I'm like, this is so close. Well, this is perfect. I'm going to go to the Samoan School. And then what happened was, like I said, when I was going to indie shows and stuff like that, I actually met Mike Quackenbush at one point at a really small indie show in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And I had met Mike. Excuse me. I had met Mike at this show, and I had expressed to him that when I graduate high school, I'd love to train to be a wrestler. He was really, really cool, super nice, and I actually went down with my dad to watch a practice. And again, Mike was really, really cool, and I loved what I saw. And at that point, I was sold on, okay, when I graduate, I'm going to go to Mike Quackenbush's school. And then I went to my first CZW show, which was Best of the Best 7, and I was blown away because I'd watched CZW a lot on tape and stuff like that. But when I went to the CZW show, I hung out in the back parking lot where a lot of the fans hang out now to like meet all the wrestlers. And I met DJ Hyde, and I had my backyard wrestling shirt on with the little. It was called our backyard promotion was called APW, which stood for Amateur Pro Wrestling, which to this day does not make sense. But our thought process was that, okay, it's like pro wrestling, but it's amateur because we're not getting paid and we're doing it for fun. So that was our thought process, even though it's ridiculous and makes no sense. So we had these APW shirts on, and DJ asked, what's APW? And we said, oh, it's our little like backyard thing, but we want to get trained. And he said to me, he goes, we should come try out at the CZW school. And I expressed to him, I said, yeah, I'm really, really interested. I said, but I have no money right now because my parents weren't going to pay for wrestling school. Like I was working a part-time job at this point to save up money to pay for wrestling school when I graduated. And to DJ's credit, he told me, because he knew I was still in high school, he said, hey, he goes, if you could only make it down once a week and you can't pay the normal advance for the once a month thing, I'll work with you as long as you end up paying the entire tuition. And to me, I was sold at that point because I just wanted to get in a wrestling ring so bad. So I ended up trying out at the Chris Cash Memorial Show in 2007, I believe, where Joe Gacy, LJ Cruz, and Alex Colon had their debut three-way. And it was awesome because, like I said, just being able to be in that building, that famous building, and getting to be in a wrestling ring was like, I had so many emotions going through my body. I was so nervous. I was so excited, but I was totally ready to train. And then I ended up starting training full time on November 14th, 2007 with CZW.
And at that time, DJ was one of the trainers. Who else was there? Dahmer. Who else was played a big role in your training at CZW?
Yeah, DJ Hyde was a huge influence in my training. Obviously, John Dahmer as well. And then there were some other guys too, like Sabian, the Black G's, also was a giant influence on me because I was such a big fan of his. And then oftentimes he would come down to the school, and he was so helpful with me specifically. Like, he worked on me with anything, any questions that I had. He was always there for me and always explained things to me if they didn't make sense. And he took a lot of time that he didn't have to take to help me out with any questions that I have. And, I still to this day am really, really thankful for that because, like I said, he didn't have to do that, but was really, really helpful. B-Boy was also really helpful. He was down there at that point, and he was really helpful with my training. Sammy was working out at the school also. So I lucked out really, really early on because I had a lot of good people that I was surrounded by who were really, really willing to help me advance with any questions that I had. And then to DJ's credit, because a lot of trainers I noticed don't do this. At the end of every training session on Thursdays, he would say to all the guys, okay, here's where I'm booked this weekend. If any of you want to go and help set up rings and show face and gain experience and know what it's like to be on the road, you're more than welcome to go. And I took DJ up on that every weekend. Like, I spent the night at his house every weekend for probably a year straight, because every time he was booked, I was with him on all the shows he was at, just to meet people and, like I said, set up rings, tear them down, be security, and just get out and experience it. Because that's the thing too that I see with a lot of guys now, that they don't do that, and they wonder why they're not meeting people and gaining experience and getting bookings, and it's because they're not going out and spending the money that you need to initially to just, like I said, meet people and show face and show everybody who's currently wrestling that you 100% want to do this, and that there's no part of you that doesn't want to succeed and doesn't want to show to everybody that you want to succeed in pro wrestling. So, and I did that with DJ, but DJ deserves full credit for that, for taking me to all the shows that he did.
And then around the same time, well, actually at the same time you were training, there was also, at the time, his name was Tyler Veritas, of course, Ryan Slater, a lot of Joe Gacy, LJ, Alex, a couple others. What do you remember about those training sessions with those guys?
I couldn't have asked for a better group of guys to train with, because we all had this cool, like, motivation amongst each other, where there was like this competitive nature where all of us worked really, really hard at the time, and all of us really, really, really wanted to just get better and progress and get on shows and be the best wrestlers that we could be and learn as much as we could. So during training sessions, it'd be like if LJ Cruz hit the best drop kick, we couldn't wait till the next drill, because we all tried to one up each other, and we all tried to hit the best drop kick the next time. Or if someone ran like a blow up drill, and let's say Alex was the least blown up of everybody, everyone thought the next time we do that blow up drill, I'm going to be the least blown up. And we all just really, really pushed each other, and we all got along instantly, which was really cool. There was no drama between any of us. Like, we all really, really got along, and all of us are still friends to this day, which is really, really cool, because when you grow up and you're in that environment where we were all just pretty much kids at that point, it's really, really intimidating to like think that you grow up your whole life wanting to be a wrestler. Now you're finally getting this shot with all these guys who know what they're doing, and you're just getting beaten up, and you're scared to death because you don't want to screw up, and we're all doing this together. So it's a really, really cool thing to know that, like, all of us, like I said, have been so close through this whole thing. And we've gotten the experience, and we got to kind of grow up together in the CZW Academy together.
And didn't you also do some training at Ring of Honor?
Yeah, that was actually a little bit later. There was a guy from Australia, Ryan Eagles, who came over for a bit, and he again, me and him get along really, really well. I'm good friends with him, and he was training at the Ring of Honor school, and he had said something to me about he's like, hey, I'm training at the Ring of Honor school on Wednesday. Would you like to come down? And I said absolutely, because like I said, at this point, any kind of training that I could get. Anytime I could get in a wrestling ring, I was all about it, especially for a company like Ring of Honor. So I went down, and I was, again, nervous, terrified. Delirious was the head trainer at this point. And it was an awesome training session that day, and I ended up doing like a little gym match with Eagles at the end of the training session. And Delirious really liked me from the start, which was cool. And he ended up inviting me down. He said, anytime you want to come to the Ring of Honor school, you're more than welcome. So, again, I took him up on that offer. And every week there for a while, I was training pretty heavily at the Ring of Honor school, the CZW school, and then doing random indies at this point, or just going to hang out and show face. So I was pretty busy pretty early on.
And naturally, as a result of all this training you're getting, eventually you became ready to have real matches. Do you remember your first match, where it was, who was against?
Yeah, my first match was not by design by any means. It was a situation where I was at an NBA show, and this was to raise money for Sabian's broken jaw that
was
he had
that the
just
arena?
received. Yeah. It was at the arena. It was April 6th, 2008. It was a battle royal, and I had borrowed LJ Cruz's old gear. That he wore for his that three-way that I was talking about earlier, because I didn't have my own gear at this point. And it's so funny looking back, because I remember being so nervous, and I was working over Dahmer in the corner, and he asked me, he goes, "You all right? How you feeling?" And I just didn't even talk to him. I was just so amped up and so excited to be in a wrestling ring. And now looking back, all battle royals really are is punch, kick, and choke. But at the time, I was just so nervous and so afraid, but after it was over, I felt like the highest that I've ever felt. It was the absolute best feeling, just to think like, oh my gosh, I finally got to have a pro wrestling match, and let alone in the famous bingo hall. So it was really, really cool, really, really cool.
And then later in the year, you eventually have your singles debut and the start of your regular career in CZW. This was in September of 2008. You and Tyler had your first singles match, one-on-one, to kick off the cash doubleheader that day. What do you remember about that?
Yeah, again, that was a situation where that was completely thrown together, because that day that me and Tyler had gotten there, initially we were supposed to do the match, then the match was off, then the match was on, then the match was off. So we were a nervous wreck that day too, because we weren't sure if we were going to get the chance to even have the match. But then we ended up getting to do it. It was like 5 or 6 minutes long. It was the opening of the afternoon show, and that to this day is probably my top 3 favorite moments that I've had in wrestling. Just because it was so cool. Again, being in a building that famous, being able to wrestle your very best friend in the entire world, whether it's pro wrestling or outside of pro wrestling. And then our families were there, and fortunately the crowd was really behind us. And like I said, we were just an absolute nervous wreck, but getting to do that with my best friend was really, really, really cool. And I'm always going to hold that very, very close to me.
From there, you become a regular. And through the fall, you had a bunch of tag matches with Tyler. You were wrestling against guys like, again, Joe Gacy, Alex Colon, Ryan Slater, who at the time had a different name, which we won't repeat. Eventually, you get to participate at Cage of Death 10, which was your first, I guess, really big show. And you tagged with Tyler and LJ against Joe, Alex, and Ryan. What do you remember about that match and that day? And
yeah, it was Cage of Death. So all of us were just when you're a wrestler, you always bring your A game and you always bring 100%. But when it's Cage of Death, there's just that little extra spark under you to where you're like, okay, I really got to bring it. I really got to make sure that I'm on my game. So all of us were really, really nervous that day. And we had actually done that exact 6-man match a couple of months prior at another CZW show. So I remember with this one, we're thinking, okay, we have to top that one. And I don't think that we did, because the first 6-way that we did was definitely better, I think. But it was still really cool, and it was a cool moment to be able to wrestle at Cage of Death for sure. But I knew that when I had that match, I needed to have another one at Cage of Death that was a little more memorable. But like I said, it was really, really cool to be able to wrestle at my first Cage of Death, and then get to do it with pretty much the guys that I grew up with in wrestling initially, in like LJ Cruz and Tyler and Joe and Alex and Ryan and stuff. So it was still a very cool moment nonetheless.
All right, and then also in 2008, you start working regularly in some other feds around the area. Maryland, you had a lot of work with EWA, MCW. What are your thoughts on the whole Maryland wrestling and your start there?
Yeah, when I started working for the promotions in Maryland, the biggest thing there, I think, that helped me career-wise was they gave me a lot of creative freedom to kind of express and be the wrestler that I wanted to be, in the sense of I got to, for the first time, really start working heel there. And there wasn't any kind of real direction. Like, it was kind of like, do whatever you want, which can be good and can be bad. But to their credit, they gave me a lot of freedom, like I said, to cut my own promos, to be who I wanted to be. And I got to wrestle Ryan McBride a lot for the first time there, and me and him had some really good matches together in Maryland. And I got to wrestle some pretty big names there too, like guys like Tommy Dreamer and guys like Al Snow. So I really started to gain some experience and some confidence when I started wrestling in Maryland. And it kept me busy too, because like I said, at that point I was wrestling for Maryland promotions 2 or 3 times a month on the weekends. So right there was 2 or 3 weekends out of the month that I was busy, especially early on in my career, which was so important for me to just get ring time and stuff. But yeah, they were really, really helpful initially for me, like developing myself and learning how to wrestle and learning how to play a character and stuff like that. So yeah, I loved wrestling in Maryland, and still do when I get the chance to.
Of course, you were also briefly known as Adam Carell.
Yes, and for a day I was actually known as Adam Stoltz also. So I've had 3 names, and I obviously started as Adam Cole, and then I came into Maryland, and there was another guy who also wrestled at CZW. His name was Cole Calloway, who wrestled at EWA and MCW, and I actually came in before he did, and then he came in, and they made me change my name, so I was bummed about that. But they said, okay, you need to come up with another name. And then Adam Stoltz was picked for me for a day. And then I explained to them how I had AC on my tights. So I'm like, I don't want to get all new tights made with AS. So we came up with another name, and Adam Carell was chosen. And then fortunately, as time went on and I got to like make my name in other promotions and CZW continued to grow, they said, Dan McDevitt actually came up to me and said, hey, I don't know why your name's Adam Carell. Like, you should be Adam Cole all the time. And I'm like, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's what I've wanted all along. So fortunately, then later on, I got to switch back over to Adam Cole everywhere, which was awesome, because I hated having 2 names. I hated it.
I know at different points in your career, you've had a lot of, you've been lucky to have like a lot of veterans that have kind of helped lead the way for you and guide you. Around that time, around the early portion of your career, who were some of the big influences for you?
Really big influence for me was Steve Corino from the very beginning, because I had done shows for Samu for WXWC4 for a while, and Steve was working there at the time, and his manager at the time was Rob Dimension, and Rob had been on a lot of shows, and Rob had seen me work, and he really, really liked what he saw. So I guess he had mentioned to Steve that, hey, if you ever get a chance to work with this Adam Cole kid, you're going to have a lot of fun. And there was a situation where someone didn't show up, or someone was hurt or something at a WXWC4 show, and Steve kind of helped book the card, and it ended up working out where it was me and Carino, and we got to finally have a match together. And it was so cool because, Steve could have gone out there and he could have said, okay, it'll be easy. We'll go out 8 minutes, one and done, and then, we'll hit the showers and head home. But Steve, to his credit, we went out and had like a 25, 30-minute match just because he was having a great time. And I learned so much that day from being in the ring with Steve. And anytime I have any questions about anything, like I said, kind of about Sabian, anytime I have any questions or concerns about anything, Steve is always there to, guide me in the right direction. And was such a huge influence for me, like initially when I started. And then this guy wasn't necessarily an influence for me when I first started, but I had actually met Joey Matthews really, really early in my career also. And this was like, I was just doing security at this point for MCW, and I was going around, I was really, really nervous, saying hello to everybody, and Joey was with a large group of people, so I always avoided going up and saying hello to him because I didn't want to interrupt him. But Joey had known this by this point, and Adam Flash, another guy who's been so helpful with me, knew this was going on. So he came up to me, Adam Flash did, and he said, "Hey, come here, follow me for a minute." So I came to the back in the locker room at MCW, and Joey was sitting there with Christian York and the Bruiser, who's another MCW guy, and Adam Flash, and it was me, and then Drew Gulak and Tim Donst kind of in the corner. And Joey stuck his hand out to me and said, "Oh, hey man, by the way, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Joey Matthews. It's nice to meet you. I've been working like 15 years." And I knew he was just being facetious with me. And I was like, "Hey, I'm really sorry. I wanted to come say hello, but you seemed busy." He's like, "Yeah, one of the protocols here is you want to always come and say hello to the veterans. It's kind of really important. It's really disrespectful what you did." And I wasn't in on this at all, so I was just crushed, and I was like red in the face. I was so embarrassed. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm so sorry. And he stopped. He goes, okay. And then he just starts looking me up and down, and he goes, "You're a good-looking kid." And I went, "Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it." He goes, "Yeah, real good." He goes, "Turn around for me." And so I look over at Drew, and I look at Tim, and they look at me, and they're like, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I'm like, "I'm going to listen." Because I was told from the beginning, if a veteran asks you to do something, you have to do it. So I turned around, and he goes, "Stop." And it's, the feeling of just being stared at, obviously. And he's staring at me. And he goes, "All right, turn back around." And he goes, "That looks good." And at this point, he's rubbing his belly button. Like, just completely working it completely. Like, not way cooler than the way I'm doing it, obviously. And I think he had his shirt up at this point, too. And he goes, "Lift your shirt up for me." So I lift my shirt up a little bit. He's like, "Man, you got some nice abs. I'm like, "Oh, thank you, Joey. Thank you." And he goes, "Take your shirt off." So I take my shirt completely off. He makes me turn around again. And after about a minute of just that completely awkward moment, he said, "Put your shirt back on, you faggot. Now get out of here." And I just left. And I was crushed, like so crushed. I thought he hated me forever. But then I found out later that, me going with that and me sticking with that actually made me pretty over with him. And then Joey was always really, really cool to me from that point on. But again, he was a guy that I always really, really looked up to. So,
Wow. All right, so moving on to 2009. Early on in the year, you make your first appearance for Ring of Honor in February. The first HDNet tapings at the arena. How did that come about? And what were your feelings on getting a chance to wrestle for Ring of Honor?
Yeah, well, obviously, I was a huge fan of Ring of Honor growing up. Huge fan of CM Punk. I was straight edge all through high school just because of CM Punk. And I remember thinking about wrestling schools to go to, and Ring of Honor's school was obviously on the list. But I was so intimidated by the athletes there and the product there that I legit thought there's no way I'll be able to hang at the Ring of Honor school, so I didn't go. Because I was honestly afraid. And then, like I said, I had started training with Delirious at the Ring of Honor school. My confidence had started to build, meeting guys like Steve Corino and Joey for those couple of times, and Adam Flash, and like I said, kind of making my name in Maryland a little bit, getting a little more exposure. So, like I said, I had been training at the Ring of Honor school, and then once I felt comfortable, I approached Delirious and I said, "Hey, do you think it'd be okay if I came to one of the shows and just helped set up?" and help tear down the ring? And he said, yeah, absolutely. So I'd been training at the school for a couple of months, and I went to about, between 3 and 5 shows. And I'd drive, whether it was an hour and a half or whether it was 4 hours. I would drive to the show, help set up, help tear down, meet everybody, just to kind of show face and get my name out there with those guys. And then I got that opportunity that one weekend at Ring of Honor on the HD Net tapings, where I got to do my first dark match, and I actually ended up doing 2 dark matches. I did one, I believe it was a Friday, Saturday, maybe it was a Saturday, Sunday, but I did, it was some double shot weekend where I did the first day dark match and I did the next day dark match. And it was actually like the worst set of matches that I've ever had. And I thought for sure there was no way that I would ever be brought back to Ring of Honor because I had such bad dark matches. But then later to find out that you weren't really being evaluated in that moment. It was more like them testing the cameras and everything to get ready for their big TV tapings, and rightfully so. Like, we were just guinea pigs pretty much to get the cameramen warmed up. But I had my first match against John Kerman for a Ring of Honor dark match, who he's a really good guy, big fan of him. And we just didn't have, it wasn't a good match. We were both nervous, or specifically I was nervous. The finish came off flat, and I think we went overtime, or we were short or something like that, and they were angry at us for that. So I was all disgruntled and upset about that, and thought, okay, the next day, I'm really going to make a good impression. And I was in some tag team match, and we ended up going overtime. So it was like right when I got the hot tag, I came in, I'm bump feed, and then in comes the Dark City Fight Club, which obviously was not planned. They beat the crap out of us. We got to the back and we just got screamed at. Like, you guys went way over time. You don't know what you're doing. When we say go home, like just screaming at us. And again, it was a moment of just being completely crushed, because the Ring of Honor is a company that I really, really wanted to work for. And making such an initial bad impression, I was just destroyed. But then I got back up from it and thought, okay, I'm not going to let this affect anything. I'm just going to work harder. And I learned from it. I learned a lot from it, because working, television style and working just a, regular house show or an indie match is much different than working TV. So it's really, really cool that I got that experience so early on. The importance of times and working the camera and stuff like that. So yeah, initially that was crushing at first. It was so weird, because I was so happy to be wrestling in Ring of Honor, but it ended up being a horrible weekend for me as far as in ring goes. But I bounced back from it. So.
All right. Back over at CZW, you're doing a lot of tag matches with Tyler. You had you had a couple matches with TBA, Bruce and TJ. A couple really good matches. What other, besides them, or any matches stick out to you during that time when you were tagging with Tyler?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Bruce Maxwell and TJ Cannon, because those guys are both of them are very, very good friends of mine now. And when me and Tyler got to wrestle them, we were such big fans of theirs. So it was so cool to be able to go out and have a match with them. And at the time, the one tag match we had with them for the tag titles at CZW, I think it was Down with the Sickness a year later. So I think it was in 2009 at CZW.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we were really, really proud of that match. We really, really enjoyed it and had a good time with them. Because again, those guys are so talented, and they made me and Tyler look really, really good that night. And I kind of have a story with them one time too, where I was supposed to. This wasn't going to a CZW show, but I had been traveling with TJ and Bruce for quite some time at this point too, where it was a situation where anytime they were booked on a show, I would try to go with them again just to show face. And I was supposed to go with them to a show the night before, but I couldn't make it because of some family emergency. But I ended up going with them to the show the following day on Sunday, a show that they had. And Bruce decided that he was going to try to rib me and seem really, really angry with me. But TJ filled me in on this entire thing. He's like, hey, here's what's going to happen. So what happened was Bruce is driving down the turnpike, the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania turnpike, and he's progressively getting more and more mad at me. Like, hey, you're a greenhorn. When you say that you're going to come to a show on a Saturday with us, you have to go. It's the biggest sign of disrespect. And me personally, I'm always that guy who wants no confrontation. And I'm always like, yeah, I'm really, really sorry. But because I was in on this, I started talking back a little bit. So I said to him, yeah, well, I'm sorry I had bigger obligations. Like, you need to worry about yourself. You need to not worry about me. And Bruce was so surprised that I had been talking back to him. So, again, we're driving down the highway, and he ends up pulling off on the side of the road in the middle of the highway and gets out of the car and and I get out of the car too. He starts pushing me in the middle of the highway, like as all these cars are going down, pushing me, saying, "You got an attitude? You got a problem?" So I ended up taking my shirt off and completely like Ric Flairing the situation and screaming at the top of my lungs, like the veins are popping out of my neck. I'm like, I go to chop Bruce, but it's like the wussiest chop ever because I was afraid he was going to punch me because he's not in on this. So I'm all fired up, and then TJ ended up letting him know it was a big rib, and then Bruce never talked to me for like 12 hours. So it was, those guys are a riot. It's always fun to travel with those guys. First time I ever got drunk was with TJ Cannon and Bruce Maxwell, actually.
I heard that story.
First time I ever got drunk.
I didn't know the story, neither did the fans.
I don't know if this one's. I don't know if this is the one he wants to share.
I could share parts of it, maybe.
Okay. Well, you go ahead.
We were at Ty Hagen's house, Tyler Veritas' house, and TJ and Bruce were there again. It was a weekend of travel, and I had never had a drink in my life, and I was convinced that, like, I'm not going to drink. It's just not for me. And then you get into pro wrestling, and everything changes. So they had convinced me. They said, hey, you're going to have a drink. It's a safe environment. Like, everything will be fine. And long story short, I ended up getting completely naked and like just doing like flip bumps onto Tyler's floor and like throwing up everywhere and just completely embarrassing myself and like having this very like I'm that kind of guy that when I drink I get very like lovey-dovey and sentimental. Like I don't get angry ever. Like I love everybody, put my arm around everybody, but I was doing this while I was just butt naked. So that was what made it a little awkward for everybody, considering I was the only one who was having my first drinky drink for the first time. So I got to share that very special moment with the best around.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so fall of 2009 in CZW, there's the Wired title tournament, which you went all the way to the finals in. You had matches with Cologne, Rich Swann, and then, of course, Tyler. What were your thoughts on that whole tournament and those matches? Anything stick out to you?
Yeah, we took that whole tournament as like a giant opportunity for all of us because I remember Michael Pankos was really excited about it. We were really excited about it because it was a brand new championship that all of us were thrown into, and it was it's funny because all those matches are so different to me and kind of have different memories for different reasons. Like I remember the first time I called a match completely in the ring with absolutely nothing planned, like no finish, was my match I had first round with Alex Colon. Because we had been doing a bunch of Les Thatcher clinics at this point, and he was so heavy on, call everything in the ring, do everything in the ring. So we had decided, okay, we're going to institute what he had been teaching us, and go try to do that. So that was a good learning experience for me and Alex at that point. Like I said, because we're so used to just calling everything in the back, whereas this time we got to just completely go out there and call everything in the ring. So that was a good experience. And then I had remembered wrestling Rich Swann. In the Wired tournament also, which ended up opening a ton of doors for me later on because of the people that were there. But that ended up being like one of the worst days ever until like I ended up finally getting to the building and then wrestling Rich because I love wrestling Rich Swann. I think he's one of the most talented guys like on the independents by far. So it was really, really cool getting to wrestle him. But that day I remember it was on my way to the show. I ended up like wrecking my car and like flying into a ditch. And, I got to the show really late because the car was all messed up because it was raining and I just skidded into some ditch. So, because I tried to stop too quick. So I got to the show and like everyone was kind of on edge that day anyway. So it was just a really like tense day. And me and Rich were like, let's just go out and have a killer match. And I think we did because that was one of my favorite matches in CZW up to that point, wrestling Rich. And And then again, at Cage of Death the following year, me and Tyler found ourselves in like a dream come true situation where I got to wrestle my best friend on the biggest stage at CZW for a brand new championship. This time, he walked away the winner. But it was really, really cool to get to wrestle him. I wish our match could have been on the DVD because it's really, really hard to get footage of it now. Like I don't have it now, but it's a match that I'm definitely still proud of to this day.
Okay. Also in fall of 2009, you participated in GBW's Battle of Gettysburg, which you went on to win. You wrestled 4 matches in that tournament. DJ, Ryan McBride, Quinn Nash, Eric Enders. Of course, this is for Greg Excellent. That's his Fed. What did that whole tournament mean to you? Any memories of that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, like me and Greg Excellent are really, really close personal friends. So it's always fun to go wrestle for Greg and get to wrestle at GBW. Like GBW is such a fun promotion to work for because it's family friendly. There's no drama ever. Everyone really gets along, and the crowds are normally really good and really, really involved and really into the show. So it's always a good time to go to Gettysburg for Greg Excellent's promotion. And this was the first time I had ever done any kind of tournament where I was going to be wrestling so many times in such a short amount of time. So I took this as a complete test for me, something kind of next level to prepare myself as far as wrestling multiple matches in one night, which is what you have to do lots of times in pro wrestling. So that was really, really cool, and it was all completely different opponents. Like DJ is a completely different opponent. Ryan McBride, Quinn Nash, Eric Enders. And each match told a different story, and it was cool. Like I said, to get to do a tournament like that and get to gain that experience of getting to wrestle so many different people in one night.
And then you just talking about how he's a good friend of yours, Greg Excellent. What do you think about Greg, like as a performer? You think he's underrated?
Completely underrated. That's to an extent kind of what I miss about wrestling, but I think it's coming back to this is everyone is so similar. Or for a while it was everyone looked the same, everyone acted the same, everyone talked the same. But like what I always loved about wrestling was all the different cast of characters that there were. Like there were really, really small guys who were really fat. There were huge guys who were in great shape. You could turn on a wrestling show and, like I said, just see people from all walks of life and all different casts of characters, which made wrestling so interesting and so compelling, I think, at that time, because everybody got a taste of everything. And I think Greg brings something completely different to the table that not a lot of people can bring. It's so cool because he's a funny looking guy and he's hilarious. So his ability to embrace that and use his look and use his attitude in real life and turn it into this character that he's created is so entertaining. And that's pro wrestling entertainment. So he knows exactly what he brings to the table, and he brings it to the table each and every time. He's not trying to be something that he's not. He's really, really good at what he does. And like I said, I think he's extremely underrated, and he knows exactly what he's doing.
And he's a genuinely good person too.
Great human being. Yeah.
And while we're talking about Greg and GBW, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Justin Roberts, who unfortunately just passed away. What were your thoughts on that whole situation and losing JT?
Yeah, it's well, first of all, it sucks because JT was a guy that anytime we were on the road together, like if Greg, normally if JT was there, Greg was there. So lots of times, like the crew of guys that goes out to eat, it would be like me, Ryan Slater, another guy, Eric C. Jones, who I love to death, and JT Roberts and Greg Excellent. We'd all go out to eat after a show, whether it was like NWA Force One in New Jersey or GBW or wherever it was. We would all get together and we'd all go out to eat and talk and laugh and just have a good time because we all got along outside of pro wrestling too. And JT was such a good human being. He was such a good dad. And what makes me saddest kind of about the whole situation, at least wrestling wise, was he was just starting to really get into a groove, kind of like he was just starting to really find his niche, and who he was as a wrestler. He got himself into great shape. He understood wrestling from a psychology standpoint, and like I said, he was really really good in the ring. Also, anytime I got to wrestle JT, it was always a pleasure. It was always easy. It was always a lot of fun, and but more importantly than that, like I said, he was a really really good human being. I'm not going to sit here and say I was his best friend because I wasn't, but I can certainly sit here and tell you he was a really good friend, and I miss him like crazy. I really do.
So I forgot to ask you back in when we were talking about the early part of your CZW career, what was your relationship like with Zandig?
Yeah, my relationship with Zandig was kind of how everyone's initial relationship with Zandig is, and that's you're completely intimidated. Like, I kind of treat Zandig as far as his intimidation factor as like he's like the Vince McMahon of the independents, in the sense of like people are very afraid to approach him because he has such a powerful presence about himself and an intimidating presence, which is great too, considering he was a wrestler and he had that presence about himself. Which I think is not only, how well he was at ultra-violent wrestling, but because he had such a good presence was why he did so well, because he just carries himself like a star. So when I had met John initially, it was a really, really scary experience. And the only time that I actually ever talked to Zandig was I had my first match for CZW at Cashmere's, which was like behind a strip club. And it was me and The Reason against Joe Gacy and Alex Colon, who were GNC at the time. And Alex had decided, he said, okay, I really, really want to have a good match. We got to do something crazy. And so you're going to give me a top rope Canadian Destroyer. And I was all about it. I'm like, okay, great. This will hopefully help me get over with the CZW crowd, because I wanted to make a good impression. So I did that top rope Destroyer. Alex took it awesome. And, the finish of the match happened or whatever, and I got to the back, and Zandig was back there. And he just shook my hand and said, hey, I really like that move off the top that you did. And I was like, oh, cool. I impressed Zandig, because that was really important to me, and it was neat that I got to do that. So, but that was like the only time that I ever actually talked to Zandig.
And part of the reason for that is because in the summer of 2009, towards the end of the summer, John sold the company to DJ. Well, what were your thoughts when you heard that DJ was buying CZW?
Well, initially, anytime there's any kind of transition period, it's a little scary at first, because you're not really sure where the direction of the company is going to go, and how everything's going to flow. And not that I didn't believe in DJ and what his vision was and what he was going to do, but like I said, it is intimidating when someone who's been in charge for so long finally steps down and there's a new leader. So I think all of us were kind of nervous as far as how's everything going to go, what's going to happen. And then DJ took over, and because I'd built such a good relationship with DJ as my trainer and stuff like that, and then seeing his vision and seeing his passion to take CZW to the level that he wants it to, it ended up being a great transition period for CZW, because I think DJ has a lot of fresh ideas. I think he's still really, really hungry. He's still really, really motivated, and he does want to take CZW to that next level. So as it went on, and as time passed, it was actually really exciting to see DJ take control of CZW and see what he's done with it. And I've gotten a lot of good opportunities from it.
And one of the first things DJ did after he took control of the company was he basically handed control over to Mike Burns, who began his run, what was it, I guess his second run, Gary? His second time in charge of running the book for CZW. And that basically started with the first month DJ was in charge and ran through part of 2010. How did you like working for Mike Burns?
I liked it a lot.
And you can be honest here.
Yeah, no, I really did. I'm being completely honest, because my favorite period of CZW was actually when I believe Mike Burns was booking with the Eddie Kingston and Chris Hero feud, correct?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, because that was what that was what got me into CZW, actually. So I was a big fan of the way he booked that and his direction of the company. Was he part two of bringing in the guys from Cali and stuff like that, and the Canadians and stuff like that too? Okay, yeah. So having Mike in charge, I thought, oh, this will be really cool. I get to work for Mike Burns, and then too, I think he believed in me to a point too, because he said, I was going to start my feud with Sabian, where we had done a 15-minute time limit draw, the 20-minute time limit draw, and then the no time limit match. So it was cool to see initially, and I think too what happened was when me and Tyler wrestled the best around for the tag titles, he had kind of expressed to me that he wanted to take me in that direction of feuding with Sabian for the junior title after seeing that match. So that was cool to know that I'd done something to show him that, okay, I can be in a position where I can contend now for the junior heavyweight championship and eventually even going over and winning the championship. So, like I said, Mike Burns was very helpful. And it was cool to work for him for sure when he was in charge for the little bit that he was. I didn't get to know Mike as well as I wanted to, but it was still cool to work for him.
And during that time, you just touched on it. You had that feud with Black G's for the junior heavyweight title. You guys had a bunch of matches in the beginning of 2010, which of course culminated in May when you won the title from him. Well, you won it in a three-way actually, but you did win the title. What were those matches with Sabian like?
They taught me a lot. And what those matches taught me was, number one, was conditioning. Because the first 15-minute time limit draw that I had with Sabian, I've never been more blown up in a ring before. I remember being so embarrassed and with myself and my own performance. I was gassed out of my mind during that match. I was so tired. I think it was a combination of nerves, being put in a position where it's like, oh man, I'm wrestling Sabian, a guy that I really, really look up to, in the arena for the junior title. And with Mike Burns really believing in me, this is a big match, and I was nervous. I was very nervous. So doing that match, I remember being, like I said, really, really tired. And I told myself after that match that I would never let that happen again. That I needed to, up my conditioning and do whatever I could to never be in a position where I feel like I can't give my best performance because I'm tired. So I'm very glad that I went through that experience. Because, like I said, there's no worse feeling in the world than going out and wrestling and wanting to give your best performance and not being able to because you're tired. Because Sabian's one of the most conditioned indie wrestlers out there. And so I told myself I would never let that happen again. Also, what I learned is the crowd was not very receptive to... They were okay for our 15-minute one, but they hated our 20-minute time limit draw. And I think it was a combination of us going in and them knowing that we were going to go 20 minutes. I don't think I was a viable enough element in CZW yet to where they wanted to see me for 20 minutes. Excuse me. So they decided kind of early on that they weren't going to have any part of this match. And what I learned from that, I think, is being able to be confident in the fact of if an audience doesn't like what you're doing and they don't like what they're seeing, to not freak out and to not lose your mind, but maybe change direction. Like looking back on that match, there are definitely things that I would have changed. And actually a guy, John Moxley, once told me something that I think is so true. He said he was wrestling Sami Callihan at one point, and the crowd was really dead for him in Sami's match. And so what he did was they ended up brawling to the outside, something completely not planned, and they teased like they were going to go through a table for a while. And the crowd started getting interested because they're like, oh, someone's gonna go through a table. And they never used the table, but they used that as a tool to just grab the audience's attention again. And I thought that was so smart, and he's clearly knows what he's doing. He's down in Florida right now. So I remembered that and said, man, if I could have somehow instituted that in my 20-minute time limit match with Sabian, maybe we would have got the crowd more involved. But I'm so glad that happened the way that it did. Not because it's a shame the audience didn't really enjoy it, but I'm glad that it happened because it made me realize that if I'm in a situation where maybe an audience isn't happy or they chant "you effed up" or whatever it is, I'm not going to freak out. I'm not going to lose my mind. I'm going to keep my composure, and I'm going to stick to the game plan and do what I have to do to try to get the crowd involved again. And then obviously the three-way came with me, Sabian, and Ruckus. And again, I've been a fan of guys like Trent Acid, guys like Sanjay Dutt, guys like Ruckus, guys like Sabian, and all those guys who have held the junior title for over the years. And it was awesome to say that I could add my name now to the list of the guys that held a championship that is really that historic. I don't think there's a junior championship anywhere on the independents that has as much history as the CZW junior title. So,
and you actually end up holding that title for 553 days.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Which is a year and more than a year and a half.
Yeah, so as far as I know, I'm the
longest
reigning
champion.
CZW champion in history, which is even cooler to say.
Yeah. So, during that time, you had several memorable title defenses. One of them being in July of 2010, you wrestled Sanjay Dutt. Mm-hmm. What was that like?
Again, great learning experience for me because Sanjay again was a guy who didn't have to take the time to explain to me afterwards things that I could do to treat myself more like a star and come off more like a star, but he did that, and it was a pleasure getting to wrestle him. Obviously, he's been all over the world and done his thing for years now, and he's so good in the ring. So it was so easy because I remember initially I used to get really, really nervous to wrestle these great wrestlers. But now you find out later that the reason they're so good is because they can have great matches with anybody. So anytime I'm in the ring with someone as good as Sanjay, my nerves kind of instantly go away because I know that everything's going to be okay because he's in there, and he carried me to a really good match that night. So it was a lot of fun getting to wrestle Sanjay. And like I said, he explained to me afterwards things that I can do to carry myself more like a star and portray myself more like a star and come across as someone who's like a main event player. And I took a lot of that to heart, and I ended up instituting it later in my heel run as CZW junior heavyweight champion.
The following month, this might not have been one of the more memorable matches, or maybe not one that jumps out to people, but you had a match in North Carolina with Ryan Slater, and it's not even so much that match, but that whole show and that whole trip was pretty memorable. Do you remember that show in North Carolina?
I remember me, Greg Excellent, Ryan Slater, Joe Gacy, and Tyler Veritas all drove down together in our own car instead of going in the van, which the trip itself was a blast. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, getting to the building and I think like we talked to the guys at the building and they didn't even know that like a wrestling show was going on. So like that was awkward. The music was off the whole night, so I ended up coming out like a robot that night because my music was glitching. But I will say this for the what was it, 30 people?
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
For the 30 people that showed up, they were excited. Like I'll give them that. Like they sounded like more than 30 people, which I will say this too. Like I would much rather wrestle in front of 30 people who are having the best time of their lives than wrestle in front of 500 people that could give two shits of what you're doing. And to their credit, when we came out that night, they were involved and they had a good time. So it made the trip for sure worth it. I think I had a ball. But yeah, I remember that match too, like with Ryan, which again I really, really enjoy wrestling with Ryan Slater. But my favorite was actually the one that we had at the arena a couple months before. I think it was my first title defense.
Yeah, June, I think.
Yeah, and that was a complete throwaway match. It was like, okay, we don't know what we want to do with Cole. We have nothing for Ryan Slater. Let's just go out and have them have a match. And I think Ryan Slater is ridiculously underrated because the match that we had is still one of my favorite title defenses I've had in CZW, and the one in the arena. And he put most of that match together. And he has such a good mind, and he's so willing to put his body on the line to make other guys look good. His heel roll that night was awesome. He made me look like $1 million. And like I said, it was a match. It was a position where it was like, hey, you guys go out and do your thing. And we decided because we're friends, it's like, yeah, let's go out and tear it up, man. Let's have a good match. And I think we had a good match. I really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, love wrestling Ryan Slater, and I think he deserves the best. And I think he's definitely someone to keep an eye on here in the future.
Also, during 2010 in CZW, you're still teaming with Tyler, and you guys did the tag title tournament. You only went one round, but your one and only round was a pretty memorable one. You guys wrestled Philly's Most Wanted at the arena. That was a pretty awesome match.
Thank you. I kind of have a Joker story because it was just brought up.
Bring it on.
The first time that we wrestled Philly's Most Wanted,
Vineland, New Jersey.
Yeah, exactly. Vineland, New Jersey, at a student show, and me and Tyler. I mean, don't get me wrong. We were still very green when we wrestled them at the arena. Also, but the first tag match that we did, we were like super green. It was like within the first 10 matches that I had. So we were terrified because like we had gotten to know Sabian, and he was, like I said, he was very cool to us. And then Joker was coming back for like his like return or whatever. It's like for some warm up matches, and me and Tyler happened to be the victims. And before the match, he had a pack of matches, and or no, I'm sorry, he didn't have the pack of matches yet. All he kept saying was, we were calling the match. He's like, "Yeah, we'll do this, this, this," and he'd look over his shoulder. He'd go, "Anyone have some fucking matches?" He kept looking around. I keep looking at Tyler. I'm like, why does he want matches? Is he gonna set us on fire? Like, why does he keep asking for matches? So he finally gets his pack of matches, and he starts breaking them off, and he's like angry at this point, and he's just eating the matches, just like eating the tops of the matches. And I'm like, what is he? I remember standing there with Tyler, just watching Joker eat these matches, and going, "Hey man, it's been a great run. Like, it's really cool that we get to have this tag match together. At least we're going to die together," because I thought for sure this was it. And then later to find out that actually, for whatever reason, the sulfur, I guess, from the matches actually calms your stomach and, like, calms your nerves. And that's why he was doing it, I guess, because he was nervous, because he takes wrestling very seriously. He's passionate about it, too. So he was eating the matches to just, like I said, I guess it calms your stomach or whatever. And then we got to wrestle those guys that night, and holy crap! Like I said, Sabian's awesome. Joker's amazing too. Like I love wrestling Joker. I wish I could have a singles match with him at some point. I would love that. And again, learned a lot from those guys too. And then later on, we went and wrestled them in Philadelphia, where me and Tyler had definitely improved and gotten better by this point. And that is definitely up there as far as one of my favorite tag team matches. And Philly's Most Wanted is so good. Like, I think those guys in Japan would be, money. I think it'd be awesome. And, like, Joker definitely deserves to go over to Japan. I know Black Jesus is there now. So, yeah, it was awesome getting to wrestle those guys, for sure. But I'm glad he didn't kill me that night, because I thought for sure that was it. Thought it was dead.
Tyler had it rough in Vineland. I don't know if you remember the spot. There was a loose board in the
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
ring.
There was a loose board in the ring, and middle of the heat. I believe it was it
Joker took Tyler.
Joker laid him down, right?
Yep.
Okay. And there, like I said, there was a loose board, and Joker just jumped on the loose board, and like a slingshot, the board came up and nailed Tyler right in the jaw. So the board ended up doing more damage than Joker did, but it was still painful to watch.
For those people that were there weren't a lot of people, but those Vineland shows were really fun.
It was a blast. It was a great time to just practice stuff out and try stuff out. It's funny you bring that up, because me and Tyler, again, were supposed to wrestle at the Chris Cash show in 08. It was like our debut at the arena together. And we had a match that Thursday in Vineland, New Jersey. That when we practiced it was horrible. It was no good. And
which is part of the reason why the match almost didn't happen in Philly.
Yeah. It was and I don't blame them for being like, hey, I don't know if we want to put these guys on. It was one of those nights where, like, nothing clicked, like, nothing at all. Like, everything was just being botched, and we were just so distraught because we're like, well, there goes our big opportunity. We just blew it. And, thank God they gave us the opportunity to redeem ourselves, which I think that we did. But, yeah, that first match that we had in Vineland was just no good. But that was why I was glad that we had the chance at that time to do those shows, because you can practice as much as you want, and you can train as much as you want, and you can go to as many schools as you want. But you don't really learn how to become a pro wrestler unless you're doing a live show and working in front of a live audience, because that's the only way you're really going to learn. So for the fact that CZW gave us that shot to go out and wrestle in front of an audience was priceless. priceless for us, and it was awesome that we had the chance to do that.
Also in 2010, you finally made the big heel turn. You turned on Tyler. After being such a, I mean, for lack of a better term, the generic babyface for so long, what was that like, making the big turn?
It was great, because I took this as a chance, especially at that point in my career. I wasn't comfortable as a babyface. I couldn't find it within myself to create a character that was likable, and then too, I had that situation where I felt like, because I was wrestling in the arena for a company like CZW, and I'm this clean-cut babyface with long hair, and I smile a lot, and I don't do death matches. I knew it was going to be really hard for me to get over with that audience, because I don't flip around and do stuff like that either. So when I finally had the chance to turn heel, I said, okay, this is my shot to really show what I'm worth and what I'm really capable of. So I got the chance there also to be more creative while cutting promos, and just creating the Panama City Playboy Adam Cole character that I got to create. And it was a blast. It was cool to be able to do it too with Tyler, which made it more comfortable for the both of us too. So I got to work as a heel with my character and stuff with guys like Tyler and guys like AR Fox, who's incredible. And got to really form and create the Adam Cole character that I got to. So it was for me at the time, it was just a breath of fresh air, and I was glad that I got the shot to portray a different side of Adam Cole and show it to a larger audience instead of the smaller crowds in Maryland that I was working for.
After you turn heel towards the end of 2010, you make your international debut over in Germany with CZW. How was that, getting to go over for WXW and go over to Europe for the first time and wrestle? Yeah,
again, like talking to... Well, I'll put it to you this way, like, because someone once told me this, and it's so true. Is they said you'll go to like a family reunion, and you'll talk to like your aunt or your uncle or your grandmother or your grandfather, and they say, "Oh, how have you been? What have you been up to?" And you look at them and you say, yeah, I was just in Europe for 2 weeks, and I was getting to wrestle. And they look at you and they say, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I've always wanted to go to Europe." And they're 65, 70 years old. And for people who say that they don't like traveling in pro wrestling, it's so upsetting to me, because it's such a perk and it's such an advantage that we have. We're literally getting to travel the world and getting to see all these new places. And we're not paying for it. Not only are we not paying for it, we're getting paid to do it. And then you're going over there to do something that you love, and have a bunch of people that you never met tell you how much they love you and how awesome they think you are. Like, there's no better thing in the world than that. It's the coolest thing ever. So when I had the chance to go to Germany, I was like, of course, yeah, please. Like, I would love this opportunity. And then I got to go, and I got to wrestle a guy like Zack Sabre Jr., who I'm like such a fan of. The guy's incredible. If he lived in the United States, he'd be a giant star here for sure. And I mean, he's a giant star over there. So I had the perfect opponent to wrestle my first time. It was a great guy to make a good impression with, and then getting to wrestle in front of those fans, because all I kept hearing about was how awesome the WXW fans are. And then you go there, and everything that everyone tells you is completely the case. They're right up against the ring. They're pounding on the mat. They sing songs. They make signs. The last time I was in Europe, there was, there had to be 30 or 40 Adam sucks dick signs, because apparently I'm gay in Germany. So, like tons of these signs, and like, it's just so all the time that they take to like, commit to that they're fans of being fans, you know what I mean? And then like when Sammy went over for the 16 karat, they had all these "In Sammy We Trust" signs. And it's when an audience, and I hope fans realize this, I really do, when an audience is so passionate and so involved and they love what we do so much, that 100% rubs off on us. Like, it makes the experience so much better. Like, all my favorite moments in wrestling, 75% of the reason that I love a certain match or love a certain moment is because, like, I feel like the audience is right there with me and they're enjoying the moment and they're having a good time. They're either cheering when they're supposed to or booing when they're supposed to. So the Germany crowd is definitely an audience like that. So it was awesome getting to go overseas. I loved it. It was great. And I've been there a couple times since then. So
we'll come back to WXW in a couple minutes. But we'll finish up with 2010 in CZW. Cage of Death, you wrestled AR Fox. And talk about AR Fox.
Yeah,
in that match.
Sure. And I had a real busy weekend that weekend too, because I had Ring of Honor Television in Louisville for OVW the day before, and then we drove through the night all the way back to, and I got right to the arena to do Cage of Death, and I knew I had 2 matches that night with AR Fox, then later on with Tyler Veritas, Ty Hagen. AR Fox is the epitome of like a superstar to me on the independents. The guy has a great look. The guy has presence. The guy has great fire, and he can do things that no one in the world has ever seen before. I was once told that in order to make it in wrestling, you either have to know somebody or you either have to do something that no one else in the world can do. AR Fox has number 2. He can do things that no one else in the world can do. It's amazing to watch him. It's awesome to wrestle him because he's so good and he's so over with the crowd. And it was perfect for the character that I was trying to portray. And in CZW and the heel champion that I was trying to be, to wrestle a guy like AR Fox. To be honest, I wish I could have done it more in CZW. I wish we could have more matches together in more places than just CZW. Because he's amazing to watch, he's amazing to work with, and the guy deserves to make a ton of money wherever he goes. He's awesome.
All right, and then also in December of 2010, a CZW-related incident, Nick Gage robbed the bank. You were, what was that like, or what do you remember about that?
I remember being really disappointed. I was really bummed out to hear that happened with Nicky. And because I didn't know Gage that well, like we weren't like close personal friends or anything. But what I loved about Gage was that he was always so amped up and so excited, and he used to come up to like me and Tyler when we first started, and we wore those long bright orange tights that you hated,
creamsicles,
but that Gage loved. Like, he used to come up to us and pull us aside and had a serious discussion. Like, he would talk for a second about the match. He'd be like, "Hey, great match, but seriously, love the gear. Love the gear. You guys are like 80s baby faces. I love it. It's the best." Yeah, it'd be like the hardest high five I've ever had in my life, and it'd be stiffer than anything I took in the match with whoever I was working with. But like, Gage was always so amped up and so excited about it. He loved CZW. He loved pro wrestling. So it sucks that had to happen, and I hope he gets out soon, man. I'd love to see him again. I really would. It's a shame, the whole situation, because Gage was always awesome to us. Always awesome to me and Tyler. Wait, hold on, because I just thought of something too.
Okay.
Do you remember the time we went to Golden Corral with Nicky?
Yes.
Okay. I'm very envious of people who find excitement out of everything, like the smallest things. Gage was one of those people that day where we went to Golden Corral, and he comes back down with a plate, and he sits down, and it's a bowl of ice cream with gummy bears just covered all over the ice cream. And he's there eating the ice cream. He's going, He keeps eating. He's, And he looks up at me and he goes, "Where else in the world can you get ice cream and put gummy bears on top of it?" And just kept eating the ice cream like he was in heaven. Like there was nothing else in the world that he'd rather do. And I'm like, I love that about him. Like, he just was so pumped about like his bowl of ice cream with his gummy bears on top of it. Like, that's amazing to me.
You just shattered the character for everybody.
That's it. That's his kryptonite. You want to get a softie out of Nick Gage, you just give him a bowl of ice cream with gummy bears on top, and
that's it.
He'll show you the true Nick Gage.
Mm-hmm. I forgot one more thing that happened with you in CZW in 2010. You partnered up with Mia Yim
Yeah,
towards the end. What's it like working with Yim Yims?
she's great. She's awesome. We had both said to each other when we first started, when DJ had thrown the idea out to us that, hey, I'm going to put Mia Yim with you as a manager. And me and her had both talked, and we said that if we're gonna do this together as like you're my valet and stuff like that, I want it to be as believable as possible that we're an actual couple and we're actually hooking up and we're actually an item together. Because you see,
That was
so
your
many,
idea?
huh?
That was your idea or both of yours?
It was both of ours. And DJ was also involved with this.
Oh, okay.
DJ was also involved. No, but like you see so many like valets come out with guys that they're with, and it's like
Like
that,
the girl that was with Larry Dallas last night and wanted nothing to do
oh
with
my
him.
god, yeah, nothing to do with the show. But yeah, so you see so many valets come out with their guys, and they'll hold hands like this, and they seem like they don't want to be together whatsoever. And I'm a big fan of like I said, creating that disbelief to where people actually think that we're actually together. So we wanted to make it as believable as possible that we were together. That's where the kissing and all that stuff came into play, and she was totally game for it. To where we actually had some people say, I get messages all the time, hey, are you and Mia still together? And I've even had some of the boys say, hey, are you guys actually a thing? And it couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're friends, but like we're not like, together or anything like that. But yeah, she's been awesome to work with. Totally awesome and totally game for whatever. And she's been more of a bump machine than I have, the way that she's been taking the beatings that she has. So yeah, she's great to have in my corner, especially for the character I have in CZW.
Now you talk about how you guys, specifically tried to make it look real, and you
Yeah.
try to be, real intimate on screen. Did that affect your real life outside? I mean, you were in a relationship at the time, and so was she.
Yeah, I did for sure. The girlfriend that I have, who I currently am with now, was definitely upset about it. But to her credit, she would come to all the shows. She would watch all of it happen, and initially it really bothered her. But now she's at a point where she's completely comfortable with it and understands that it's all an act. And what really helped me with that is the girlfriend that I have now actually has done some acting and stuff like that before. So she understands that this is a performance and this is it's all part of the show. But no, it definitely initially affected us. But I remember too, again, guys saying to me all the time, they say, wait, your girlfriend's out there watching all this stuff happen? Yeah, she's out there. Man, she's a keeper. And she is. Like, she's so supportive through all the stuff I've had to do with wrestling. Like, I haven't spent, and this is just part of the wrestling game, but I haven't spent a Saturday with my girlfriend in over a year. And she's okay with that. She understands that this is what I'm going after, and this is my life, and this is my passion, and this is what I'm going to put everything that I have into. And even when it comes to me having to, make out with another girl for a character, she supports it. She understands. So I lucked out big time, because I know not many guys or girls would put up with that, but she understands because she trusts me. So I'm glad. Guess I'm trustworthy.
So things are going good for you in CZW in 2010, and things are also going really well for you over in Ring of Honor. You start working after, just working sporadically in 2009. You start working more regularly in 2010, which of course ends up leading to you being offered a Ring of Honor contract in July of that year. What was that whole process like, in getting offered the contract and then ultimately deciding to sign it, and how did that all come about?
Yeah, well, actually, if it's okay, I was going to take a step back further, because I had done, like I said, actually I had mentioned this a little while ago, my wired match with Rich Swann at CZW. Gabe Sapolsky was actually in the crowd that night. Mm-hmm. And I had been doing dark matches for Ring of Honor up to this point. And I had heard through the grapevine that Gabe was really impressed with me and Rich. So that was cool to hear. But nothing really had come of it. It was just, I never even talked to Gabe that night. So then what happened was there was a situation where Davey Richards was also working for Dragon Gate USA and Ring of Honor at the same time. And Kyle O'Reilly, who is Davey's protege and Davey's student, had been trying to get into Ring of Honor for a while, just like me, had been doing a bunch of dark matches, but Ring of Honor wasn't biting, just like they weren't biting on me. So Davey decided that he's going to bring Kyle into Dragon Gate USA. So he had convinced Gabe, he said, hey, Gabe, you need to give Kyle a shot. If you could put him on like the pre-show or something like that for Dragon Gate, that'd be awesome. So Gabe said, yeah, absolutely. I just got to find him an opponent. And he was scrambling for a guy. He didn't know who to bring in. So he's talking to B-Boy on the phone, and he's saying, I have no idea who I'm going to match up Kyle with. And to B-Boy's credit, he said, hey, you should use Adam Cole. And then Gabe remembered me from the match I had with Rich Swann. So Gabe had brought me in to wrestle Kyle in like a little 6-minute match for the Dragon Gate pre-show, which to this day, for sure, is the breakout match of my career as far as when I first started getting some real attention about myself, because Kyle's so awesome. So it was so cool to get in there and wrestle him.
That was November of 09.
Yeah, November of 09. So then I had started working for Gabe pretty regularly for like Evolve, and just started doing Dragon Gate USA. And this wasn't told by me, but part of me does think that part of the reason that Ring of Honor started to pay attention to me at that point was because maybe I was working for Gabe. So maybe they thought, oh, he had seen something that maybe we haven't seen. And then I realized too, like I had been sending, Adam Pearce was the booker for Ring of Honor at the time. Even though I was working for Gabe, I was still trying to get my foot in the door at Ring of Honor. And not that I wasn't happy working for Gabe, but I just wanted to work as many places as I could. So I'd been sending match after match after match to Adam Pearce, and I was coming in and doing dark match, dark match, dark match. And I was getting the same response of, yeah, hey, good job. But again, he wasn't biting. So I thought, I need to send him something different that's going to catch his attention. So I knew Adam Pearce was really a promo guy. So I sent Adam Pearce a couple of promos that he really, really enjoyed. So he actually brought me in to do like a dark match promo, where I just got in the ring and cut an in-ring promo. And Jim Cornette happened to be paying attention also, and they were really impressed with the promo. Ended up doing another match. And then that was when the contract offer happened. So, yeah, it was cool how everything kind of came into place, because I knew that I needed to change my game plan, because me sending match after match wasn't getting it done for me. So by me sending a promo and then having a match, I guess I seemed more valuable or more marketable to them after showing them all aspects. So then I ended up getting that contract offer, which was a dream come true, to say the least.
So you get offered the contract in July, and you eventually sign it in August. Was it a tough decision to actually put your name on the paper and commit yourself to Ring of Honor?
No, not at all. The only thing that was actually kind of challenging was I was offered the Ring of Honor contract a week before I was offered a Dragon Gate USA contract from Gabe Sapolsky. So the only tough thing that I had to decide was who to go with. And to be honest, all the situation was like Ring of Honor was running more dates. They had television at the time, and I just thought it was going to be a better opportunity for me. But I did make it very clear to Gabe that like I appreciated every single opportunity that he gave me, and he really opened the door for me to grow as a wrestler and get the experience that I really, really needed in that exposure that I did. But no, I really knew that Ring of Honor was the place that I wanted to be. But the only challenging thing was deciding where to go. But like I said, ROH was where I wanted to be. I just didn't want to upset, Gabe Sapolsky. That was all.
So in Ring of Honor around this time now, you eventually start teaming with Kyle O'Reilly. And you teamed with him for pretty much like over a year.
Yeah.
Up until just recently. What's it been like working with Kyle in Ring of Honor?
Yeah, it's funny too, because actually the whole start of me and Kyle teaming was just completely thrown together. They had no idea, I think, what they wanted to do with myself and Kyle. So they decided, okay, we're just going to throw them together as a team, which didn't upset me and Kyle, but we were both surprised because we were both brought in as singles guys, and we had both predominantly wrestled as singles wrestlers, like with the exception of me teaming with Tyler Veritas early in my CZW career. At that point, I had been wrestling strictly singles, and that is what I had shown them. And then same with Kyle. So when they paired us up together, we were both kind of surprised. And I guess they had that thought process of if they make good opponents, they'll make a good team together. Because me and Kyle had a couple matches in in Dragon Gate USA and in Chikara and stuff like that, where we wrestled each other and we had some pretty good matches together. To where we teamed. So we were both nervous because Kyle's style is so much different than mine. So we were like very unsure of how everything was going to go, but fortunately, like, we gelled and we clicked like right away. Like that first TV match that we had together, we knew that we had something special going on because Kyle is so good. And I've said this before too, and I mean it like completely, is Kyle's the best tag partner that I could ever have because he motivates me on so many levels to improve in different areas of where I want to grow. And I feel like I do the same for him. Like, he has taught me kind of like that Ring of Honor style and how to do certain things and how to carry yourself that way and how to format matches the way that he does. Whereas I've kind of shown him the importance of like, cutting a promo and having a certain presence about yourself and selling and things like that, and vice versa. Like we've both given each other criticisms and we both motivate each other. I honestly think Kyle's going to be on top of Ring of Honor in a very, very short time. I think he's going to be a huge star in Japan. I think so much of him professionally, and then on top of that, he's one of the best guys that I know in wrestling too. Like the whole tag team thing. Isn't just a work. Like we're actually really good friends and stuff like that. We really are a team together. So to get to grow in Ring of Honor together was awesome because we got to share our nerves together. We got to share our excitement together, and it was an awesome moment for the both of us. So to be able to tag with a guy as talented and as awesome as Kyle O'Reilly was like a blessing in disguise for me. Because he made me look like $1 million. I did my best to make him look really good too. So Future Shock ended up being, I think a fairly successful tag team in the early stages of when we started in ROH.
Any of those early tag matches stand out to you? I know you had some matches. You had Carino and Steen. You wrestled in Dayton. You had some
where Steen
matches.
almost killed me.
He almost killed you.
Steen said to me before, this was my first Ring of Honor house show, and I love Kevin Steen too. He said to me, he goes, "Hey, I'm thinking for the finish tonight, I'm going to give you the Steenalizer in the corner." And he quote said to me, "If you don't want to take it, I understand because I would never take it." Which should have been a light bulb in my head going, okay, maybe I shouldn't take it. But like I said, it was my first house show. I didn't want to say no to anything. I'm ready, man. I'm ready to make that impression. And I'm like, no, it's fine. Let's do it. And he did it to me, and he took care of me. Kevin, like I said, Kevin's awesome. But looking at the video, my head is probably this close to hitting the mat. Like, if it had been off just by a little bit, I'd be dead. So that it's terrifying to watch. But like I said, I was fine, but it was so terrifying to watch. So yeah, that's just a memory from that match that I remember with Kevin.
December 2010, you wrestled at the Manhattan Center for the first time.
Yeah.
You and Kyle versus Kenny King and Rhett Titus. What was it like wrestling in that historic building?
Yeah, and again, like kind of seems like the story of my career is that match was not supposed to happen either. We were supposed to do that match in Mississauga, Ontario, for Ring of Honor, but there was an issue where Eddie Edwards got hurt the night before in Survival of the Fittest, and they had to change the card all around. And originally, me and Kyle were supposed to wrestle Kenny and Rhett, but they had to, like I said, they had to change everything around. So me and Kyle ended up wrestling the Bravado Brothers that night, and Kenny and Rhett did something else. I think Kenny and Rhett actually wrestled Steen and Carino. So what happened was me and Kyle weren't supposed to be on Final Battle, but because they didn't get that match in Mississauga, they said, okay, I guess we'll just do it as the opener at Final Battle. So me and Kyle, again, totally lucked out. We were like, okay, now we ended up on Final Battle, and we wanted to make a really, really good impression. So, yeah, me and Kyle wrestled Kenny and Rhett, and those guys are just a tremendous tag team. It's really hard to have a bad match with those guys. So it was awesome to get to like open such, Ring of Honor's biggest pay-per-view that they do every year, Final Battle in the Manhattan Center in New York. For whatever reason, the New York crowd has always been very good to myself and Kyle. They've always treated us really well, and that's always like a motivational tool for us, because you always hear like, if you can get over in New York, you can get over anywhere. So the fact that they showed us that respect right off the bat, I really think that night in ROH, we showed that we belonged there. So that meant a lot to me, and getting to do it with, obviously one of my best friends, Kyle, and then getting to do it with Kenny and Rhett, a team as talented as them, it was a really cool deal. Really.
Also in 2010, you did Chikara Young Lions Cup.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like? Working for Quack and Chikara, something different?
Yeah, it was great. And, Quack wanted the exact same Adam Cole that was in CZW. He gave us a good platform where, again, myself and Kyle wrestled. And he said that, the first match that me and Kyle did in Dragon Gate USA, he wanted something similar to that, but something longer. We were the last first-round match in the Young Lions Cup, so he gave us a lot of time, too. We had like 20 minutes to do our thing. And that Chikara crowd is something else. Like, it's cool to wrestle in front of an audience that is so hip to everything that's going on in the company. They pay attention to every little detail, and Mike is such a genius in the way that he does it, to where they're passionately involved in like every little intricate thing that goes on in Chikara. So it was neat to finally get to wrestle for Chikara, because I always wanted to wrestle there. And then, like I said, being on that platform of being that last first round match where we had all that time, the crowd being so involved and so into everything, was really cool. Getting to wrestle Kyle O'Reilly again, longer this time. I had some family there, which was cool also. But yeah, I'd love to work for Chikara more too. I wish I got to wrestle there again against Eddie Kingston, another guy who's amazing. So I would love to, maybe in 2012 get to wrestle for Chikara a little more. That'd be awesome. I'd really enjoy that.
2010, and towards the end of 2009 also, as we talked about a couple minutes ago, you were doing some work for Gabe with Evolve and Dragon Gate. I guess I probably should have asked you this earlier when you were talking about the whole contract deal. But you were working for Ring of Honor before you were working for Gabe. Once you started working for Evolve and Dragon Gate, did you get any heat from Ring of Honor, the management, or the locker room at all?
The biggest issue there was there was no problem when I was doing the dark matches, obviously. But then when they wanted to invest in me and sign me to a deal with them being on television, naturally they look at Gabe as a competitor, because Gabe runs a great promotion, and he has a grip on what he's doing, and he's doing very well with it too. And then them running pay-per-views and things like that. So things kind of clashed there. So there was an issue there where, I had to make a decision, obviously. And don't get me wrong. If it was up to me, and Gabe Sapolsky still wanted to book me, I would still be working there if he wanted to have me, because I loved wrestling for Gabe. Because actually, Gabe was the first promoter that I ever worked for, who the second I got through the curtain, he was the first guy there to wait for me, to thank me and tell me how much of a good job I did. Because he has this interesting quality about himself where you want to go out and have a good match, of course, like all the time. But when you wrestle for Gabe, you want to have a good match for Gabe. Like you want to impress him. You want him to be really happy, because you want that reward when you get to the back, and him to be like, yeah, you did such a great job. Because he has that much respect amongst himself and amongst his peers. So he was like tremendous with me. So it stunk that I couldn't work for him anymore. But again, I understand the entire process of the competition and stuff like that, where with them running pay-per-views and things like that. So obviously, I had to stop working for him.
Are there any guys? I mean, there's obviously, because of the whole deal, there's certain guys that only work for Dragon Gate or Evolve, and guys that only work for Ring of Honor. Is there any guys working over there at Dragon Gate and Evolve right now that you really wish you could work that you haven't had the opportunity to yet?
Well, all the Dragon Gate guys like Shima and Naruki Doi and Shingo and stuff like that. Excuse me. Are all guys that I would love to get in the ring with at some point. Because they're so immensely talented. Like it amazes me how those guys can go out and have a 30-minute like boom, 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 nonstop, never take a deep breath match, and then go in the back and you'll see them like smoking a cigarette, and they're like completely fine, like they did nothing. They went for a little 5-minute jog on a treadmill, which is just such proof as to how talented they really are. Like that, I could only pray for conditioning like that. It's incredible. So I would love to get in the ring with those guys at some point. And then I've pretty much wrestled, I believe I've wrestled most of the Americans who also wrestle for Dragon Gate USA. But I did it so early in my career where I feel like I'd really love another round with them. Like Johnny Gargano, I think the world of that guy. He's had great match after great match, and he's managed to stay relevant and stay creative and stay important, just constantly. He's always in the limelight. People are always paying attention to him, and rightfully so. He deserves it because he's so talented. So I'd love like a real good match with Johnny Gargano. I'd love to wrestle Ricochet again at some point. Obviously, guys like, Rich Swann, who I could have that opportunity in CZW, Sammy, who I've had countless matches with. I only got to work with Eric Cannon when I was in that one Dragon Gate USA 4-way, but I'd love to have like a singles match with him. And then I know me and Kyle have talked about it before, but we'd love to have like a tag match with the Super Smash Brothers, which would be really cool. And also too is me and Kyle really think that if we got to wrestle Gargano and Chuck Taylor in a tag match, like we would love to do that also. So any one of those combination of matches would be really cool for us.
All right, let's stick with Ring of Honor now before we go back to CZW.
Sure.
Another huge weekend for you in your Ring of Honor career was WrestleMania weekend 2011. You wrestled at Center Stage in Atlanta, and not only that, you had two huge matches. First night with the Briscoes and the second night with Hero and Claudio. What was that whole experience like, that whole weekend in wrestling those two incredible teams?
Yeah, I had mentioned before, Final Battle 2010 was when we proved to the ROH audience that we belonged there. And then I felt like that weekend was when me and Kyle proved that we were like a staple team in Ring of Honor, because we wrestled, like you said, the Briscoe brothers, the Kings of Wrestling, who are arguably, if you could pick two of the top teams ever in Ring of Honor, those two teams are at the top of the list. And obviously, so it's WrestleMania weekend. The fans are extra excited. We're extra excited. And both the Briscoe brothers and the Kings of Wrestling were awesome to wrestle. We were very nervous for the match, because this was our big shot. This was our big opportunity to prove that we weren't just like an undercard team, that we could hang with former tag team champions. And I think that we did that. That weekend is probably the weekend that I'm most proud of so far in my Ring of Honor career, just because it was such a make or break situation. And that's the thing too, is I'm so thankful for that, because the first year me and Kyle had in Ring of Honor, there were so many of those situations where it felt like every single weekend we were put in a situation where it's like, okay, let's see if they can hang, let's see if they fail. And I don't think we failed yet, thankfully. So we've been put in these positions where we're wrestling the very best tag teams in the world, and we're hanging with these guys. And they're showing us why they're the very best in the world too. So it's cool, because we progressed so much and we learned so much in such a short amount of time, because we're wrestling guys who are as talented as these guys are. And then getting to wrestle in a building that historic, again, is so cool. Like, I had never been to Atlanta either, so it was cool to be in Atlanta. And the fans were really excited, and it was awesome to wrestle in that building and wrestle two teams as talented as those guys.
You also wrestled World's Greatest Tag Team. in May of 2011. How about wrestling them? What was that like?
Another great learning experience and completely different from wrestling guys like the Briscoes and the Kings of Wrestling, because those guys like to call a lot of stuff in the ring and tell a very, very good story, and it's a completely different process. And it's not by any means that the Briscoes and the Kings can't tell a good story, because I would just sound like an idiot if I said that, because obviously they can. But them working at the WWE for so long, obviously they have a little bit of a different style than, say, the Briscoes or the Kings of Wrestling. So again, that was a test for us. And these guys are much bigger, so obviously we can't pick these guys up and throw these guys around. So it really tested us to see, how we would handle wrestling guys like Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin and stuff like that. And again, great learning experience. Awesome to wrestle those guys, and very, very talented. It's awesome that they're on the ROH roster with us.
What's your relationship like with? We talked about him. I think you mentioned him earlier. Jim Cornette. How's he been with you?
Yeah, Jim has been awesome. And my first memory of Jim Cornette was me and Mike Bennett, who's also in Ring of Honor right now. Me and Mike had probably 4 dark matches together where they'd like flip flop. It'd be like I'd be the heel one time and he was the face, and then they'd switch. It was like they were trying to figure out what they liked, because me and Mike both signed the first, we signed together that day. It was like they offered Mike a contract and they offered me a contract. And we had I think this was our last dark match that we had before Jim had said this to us, but we had gotten to the back. And it's very, very short, but I just love it. So we got to the back, and Jim Cornette comes walking up to us, and he's clapping. He comes up to us, and he shakes both our hands. He goes, "Boys, that was great. I mean, it wasn't a main event at Starrcade, but it didn't have to be." And I just thought it was funny that he brought up Starrcade. So I'm trying not to laugh, but really thankful for the compliment that he gave us. So no, Jim he's so passionate, and he, of course, when stuff doesn't go right, he gets angry and stuff like that. But fortunately, I haven't been on the receiving end of any of that yet. But after all these years, to see a guy who has been up and down the road and worked with so many great talents, to see that he still is hungry as an 18-year-old kid, just breaking into wrestling, is motivating for a guy like me to, always keep that passion and never forget how much I love pro wrestling, because Jim Cornette loves pro wrestling. And it's cool to be surrounded by that energy and have a guy who just, like I said, just loves everything about pro wrestling and wants the best for everybody. And he's an awesome guy to have around, obviously, for his mind and his energy, like I said.
Okay, a couple more big tag matches you had in 2011 at the Manhattan Center. You and O'Reilly versus the Young Bucks. And then the next month, you wrestled American Wolves. How about those 2 tag teams and those matches? Any memories or anything that stands out?
Yeah. We wrestled the Young Bucks, who were at this point still Generation Me, because they were still under contract with TNA. And this was actually in the Hammerstein. So that was a different playing field for us, because we were a little more nervous because it's a bigger building. It's, tad more famous. And we're wrestling a team as talented as the Young Bucks. So we were like, okay, here we go. And I remember all that stuff coming out about the Young Bucks, about them having an ego or them not shaking people's hands and stuff. And I can tell you firsthand that couldn't be further from the truth as far as my experiences are concerned, because I remember the Young Bucks came up to me and Kyle, shook our hands, and said, "Hey, we're big fans of you guys. We're so excited for tonight's match. We really like when you guys do this. We like when you guys do this." And they knew all of our stuff, and that to me was so cool that they had taken the time to pay attention to our stuff, and that they were very excited about our match. So and our time continually ended up getting cut for that particular match. Excuse me, where it was initially I think we had 10 to 12 initially, and then stuff was running long, so it got cut down to 7. So we packed a 12-minute match into 7 minutes with an angle at the end too. But that was one of those teams where we instantly clicked and we instantly gelled, and we knew that we had chemistry right from the get-go. So it was awesome getting to wrestle the Young Bucks. in the Hammerstein, unfortunately, we've had, a lot of cool matches with them also later on in our careers too. And then, getting to wrestle Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards was just a complete other test for us too. We did that in Charlotte, North Carolina, and this was a big one too. It was cool because Davey and Eddie had that mindset of they really wanted to make us look good that night, and they didn't have to because at this point we were kind of an undercard team. We went 25 minutes with those guys, and again, when you're in there with guys as good as they are, it's hard not to have a good match with them. But you got to keep up, you got to work hard, and their talent is just on another level. So it was awesome to get in there with guys like that, and the crowd was really involved, and it's definitely one of my favorite matches for sure. Definitely one of my favorites.
Okay. You've worked for a couple different booking regimes in Ring of Honor. Pierce, and then the current, which I don't know if it's really a secret. I guess it's been in press releases, so I guess it's not a big deal to talk about it. Delirious.
Yep.
What's the differences between those two? Writing the stories, and do you have a preference? Did you have a preference?
Well, I can't really give you kind of like any kind of feedback on Adam Pearce's booking because I literally had my first contracted match with Ring of Honor the day that Delirious started. So it was like I pretty much started like with Delirious. But so I'm trying to think of like differences. I think maybe Pierce had more of like an old school like booking mindset because like I did get to see a little of it. But I mean, I was actually a big fan of the way that they both booked. Like I thought Pierce had a completely different vision than Delirious did. But I think they both, in their own right, had things that worked for them and things that didn't work for them. And they both gave me an opportunity, which I'm, very thankful for, obviously. But I can't really pinpoint and say how Adams was because I pretty much officially started the day Delirious started.
All right. How about Kerry Silkin? How has he been to work for before the most recent developments? But how was he to work for when he was the owner of the company?
I think you can ask anyone across the board. He's one of the most giving, genuine, nice people that I've ever met. He does it because he loves it, and he comes to all these shows and he supports all the guys, and he loves wrestling, and he's been so helpful to so many people for so long, all through the years of Ring of Honor. And again, just a good guy to be around. Like I was talking about Jim Cornette with that energy, that positive energy. Kerry's the same way. Just a really, really good human being with a genuine heart who puts and has put for years like his heart and soul and everything that he has into Ring of Honor. So when you have someone who's doing that, again, it's just like everyone comes together and everyone just works hard together. Like I've said this before, like I think what makes Ring of Honor so special is from the staff to the referees to the wrestlers, it doesn't matter. Everyone has that mindset of they want to do the absolute best job that they possibly can every single night. And everyone's so motivated and so dedicated that it creates like a really cool atmosphere and a really cool show for everybody. Because when the fans come to check out a Ring of Honor show, when the production guys and the wrestlers and the cameramen and the bookers all have this mindset, you're guaranteed going to get a really good show because like no one accepts second best. Everyone wants to be the best, and everyone busts their butt. So Kerry has that exact same mindset. He puts everything he can into Ring of Honor, and he's like the forefather of it, kind of. So when he has that attitude, it definitely rubs off on everybody for sure.
The most recently, the big news in Ring of Honor was the sale to Sinclair Broadcasting. That whole deal had been kept under wraps right up until, I guess, the day of the announcement. You've mentioned to me several times that none of you guys knew what was going on, and it all led to the meeting in Chicago they had, which I forget what, I guess the approximate date of that, sometime in mid-2011, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So ultimately, the meeting was to tell you guys that the company had been sold and give you some information about the future of the company. I guess can you kind of summarize what that was all like and the feeling in the locker room, what some of the speculation was, and then once it was revealed, I guess again the feeling of everybody.
Sure. Yeah, well, like you had mentioned, actually, everyone was pretty nervous because no one knew anything about this big announcement. This was totally kept under wraps. Like no one knew what was going on. So we all get there to Chicago, and we see these guys in suits walking around, and we're like, "What is going on?" Because none of us had any idea. So then a meeting happens, and then, like I said, they explained to us. They say that Ring of Honor has been sold to the Sinclair Broadcast Group, and we're going to be on broadcast television all across the United States, and just explained the entire change in the company's ownership, and of course initially there's a fear because Kerry had done such a good job of taking care of the boys and running the company the way it was run. So the second certain people see suits, they think, oh, it's going to be more corporate. There's going to be a dress code. There's going to be things we can and can't do. And to an extent, all of that, of course, will happen because we're trying to bring Ring of Honor to the next level. But for the most part, everyone took it as kind of like, okay, this is a great opportunity. We're all going to be back on television. Because, like I said, everyone in ROH wants to take that next step, and television is that natural progression. So having a group like Sinclair, with the money that it has, backing Ring of Honor, and passionately backing Ring of Honor, like I wasn't there for this, but I heard the press conference when the wrestlers showed up to do the press conference at the Sinclair headquarters, that everyone was there, all the Sinclair employees were there, shaking hands, wanting to take pictures, and really excited to see everybody. And that kind of set everyone's nerves, like to where no one was nervous anymore, because they saw that Sinclair was completely behind this, that it wasn't just some BS purchase. Like they really want to make Ring of Honor something special. So, which is, again, to have a group that's so supportive of that, and then to have a bunch of guys who are trying to be TV wrestling stars, you can't ask for a better situation, to be honest. So, like I said, of course, anytime there's change, people get scared, people get nervous, and there was that. But now after seeing it develop and the way these guys have been so professional with everything, and the way they want to change Ring of Honor in that right direction, it's been awesome. And I remember personally leaving that meeting feeling really good about it and thinking, we got something good here. We got something good going on, and I think we do. I still think we do. The markets are continuing to grow. Audiences are continuing to grow. I mean, who knows where 2013 or something like that will bring us. That is, if the world doesn't end. But hopefully it'll be for the better.
One thing I forgot to ask about also back in Ring of Honor, Ric Flair came through at one point.
So glad you brought that up.
Did you have any interactions with the Nature Boy?
Because I completely forgot. Okay. And this isn't anyone specific, but like lots of times in pro wrestling, like obviously there's egos, which I never understood because I'm such a firm believer in the aspect of you're only as good as your opponent decides to make you look. Like Shawn Michaels proved that with Hulk Hogan. It's the truth. So I never understood guys walking around with the mindset of like, oh yeah, I'm so tough and I'm awesome and you should all kiss my feet because I've held this belt for this long and I won this tournament and I've wrestled for this company. Like, stop it. It's a performance. What we're doing is a performance. There's no need for egos. And that's not the case with everybody. And most people who do really well and really succeed don't have that mindset. But this just furthered it for me when I met Ric Flair, and he was in the locker room or whatever, and I went up to Rick and I shook his hand. I said, "Hello, sir. My name's Austin. It's very nice to meet you." And he was with like a group of people, like talking to a group of people. He stopped everybody and said, "Excuse me, I'm sorry. What's your name?" And I said, "Oh, it's Austin." And he goes, "Oh, it's very nice to meet you, Austin. I'm Rick." And I thought that was so cool because he didn't have to give me the time of day. He's Ric Flair. He didn't have to stop and say hello to me. But because I shook my hand and said hello to him, he acknowledged that. And I thought that was really cool. I thought it was awesome that he took the time to do that. And there was one point, too, where Rick was there. where again this was like my third dark match for Ring of Honor, and we're in the locker room, and they're having a like pump up show meeting, and it's Bryan Danielson, me, and Nigel McGuinness, and then the rest of the locker room, and Ric Flair's like giving us a motivational speech like before the show, and I remember standing there, all geared up, ready to go, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, I do not belong here at all, but this is great that this is happening right now. Because I'd been wrestling like a year and a half at this point, I think. So, yeah, he was anytime I talked to Rick or Rick was in the locker room and stuff, I didn't by any means have a 20-minute conversation with the guy, but he was always awesome, I thought. It was cool to have a name and a star like him in our locker room. So, and he was always willing to give guys advice and stuff. He wasn't just there to get his paycheck and leave. He was always really helpful. He was really cool.
What would you still like to accomplish in Ring of Honor?
I would love. I really feel like me and Kyle have something special with Future Shock right now, or did. So I would have loved to have won the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles with him, even though now I'm with Eddie Edwards. But that goal of winning the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships is still up there with me. And then obviously, if I get a singles run, of course, challenging for the ROH World Championship would be really cool. Just getting that exposure in Ring of Honor and being put in a main event position and stuff like that, and just continuing to grow in the company would be really great. Like I would love that opportunity in ROH, and just continuing to learn from some of the guys that are there. Like, I'm so bummed out that Christopher Daniels isn't there anymore, because he's a guy that I wanted to work with so bad, because I think the world of him. But fortunately, there's so many guys now there at ROH who are so good and that I can learn from. So just continuing to wrestle like everybody on the roster, and continuing to grow as a wrestler, and being put in those situations where you have to go and have a 30 to a 40-minute match, and be able to build it the right way, and have an audience really, really invested into it. So yeah, just continuing to grow like as a wrestler, and be the best that I can be. So.